Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today as part of the Starworld BookTube Tour, I'm here to recommend some of my favorite hopeful books. This video was inspired by an upcoming release, Starworld by Paula, Garner, and Audrey Coulthurst. And a huge thank you to the host of this BookTube Tour, Cece from Problems of a Book Nerd, for thinking of me and for reaching out to make me a part of this project. So I was sent an arc of Starworld by Candlewick Press, and of course when you're sent a book in advance and you're encouraged to create content around it, you kind of always wonder if you're actually going to like it. It just so happens that I really connected with this story, and it hit me on so many different levels. It had so much valuable representation, and while it definitely goes to some very real places, it ultimately left me feeling hopeful about humanity and about life. So I'm going to talk about the book, why it fits into this theme I chose, and then I'll recommend some more hopeful books that have a very special place in my heart. Starworld is a dual perspective YA contemporary story about two high schoolers, Zoe and Sam, who absolutely do not orbit in the same social circles. Zoe is the more popular of the two. She stars in all the school plays and she's dating an all-star basketball player, and she's just one of those people who everyone knows. Sam, on the other hand, is very antisocial. She's an introverted artist who loves to play video games, and she just wants to become an aerospace engineer so that she can construct these incredible scientific innovations. These two girls have no reason to know each other or talk, but one day Zoe sees one of Sam's paintings and begs her to let it be used in the upcoming school play. Sam says she'll think about it, they exchange numbers, and then one day Sam sends Zoe an accidental text, and they realize that they have more things in common than things that make them different. For example, they both have very difficult family situations. Zoe has a younger brother with fairly severe developmental and physical disabilities, and her parents are considering sending him to live in a place where he will have constant access to professional help, which obviously is not an easy choice to make. And Sam is struggling to help her mom, who's been dealing with a spike in anxiety and OCD ever since her divorce. Both Zoe and Sam have isolated and internalized what they're dealing with because they don't expect anyone else to understand. But once they create this safe space through their stream of texts, they realize that it feels good to let other people in and to trust. I do want to give a quick overview of the representation in this book because it's really great. We have Sam, who's anxious and queer, even though the story is not an FF romance. We have Zoe, who is adopted, and as I mentioned, there is representation for disabilities and mental illness. So this book definitely goes places, but ultimately I think it has a lot to say about friends as safe spaces and giving yourself permission to be vulnerable and to trust. I truly think this book is extremely hopeful because it's about learning to let people in. It's about giving people the chance to not only know your truth, but to be there for you when you need them most. But I think it's also about the fundamental belief that people are inherently capable of change. Sam and Zoe both have to confront that maybe they haven't always had the best ideas about how to handle things, or even the best ideas about how to help their loved ones function in the past. But now going forward, they can change their behaviors and their reactions to allow their families and really themselves to grow and evolve in healthier, more productive ways. It's not easy to unlearn those habits and reflexes, or to realize that what you've done in the past wasn't necessarily wrong, but that there were just better ways to act and react, and then be okay with now knowing that. It's definitely about caring for your loved ones, but it's also about caring for yourself and having the awareness to let other people care for you as well. And that's really why I wanted to recommend some more hopeful books. Stories that are definitely balanced out by difficult situations or emotional conflict, but that ultimately leave you feeling like you're gonna be okay, and that maybe the world isn't such a horrible, unknowable place. First up is Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This is an Own Voices middle grade story about Mia, a first-generation Chinese immigrant who lives with her parents in a motel where she also works the front desk. But she's also coming to realize that her parents help hide immigrants in the empty rooms at night, and they have to make sure the tyrannical motel owner does not find out. This is another multi-layered story that covers so many worthwhile topics, but what I think of most when I look back on this book is how it explores the importance of creating a network of human cooperation. Because when we look out for each other instead of turning our backs, we get closer to a future where everyone wins. Mia is an incredible character who does not give up just because people say that she should, and she is constantly looking for ways to improve herself and to include other folks. In her author's note, Kelly Yang writes, "Often during tough times, the first instinct is to exclude, but this book is about what happens when you include, when despite all your suffering and your heartache, you still wake up every morning and look out at the world with fresh, curious eyes." Next up is a book that's not technically out yet, but it's going to be released within a matter of weeks, and that is Mason Deaver's I Wish You All the Best. This is Own Voices Queerlit about a teenager named Ben who comes out to their parents as non-binary and is immediately kicked out. Ben has no choice but to reach out to their previously estranged sister, who luckily welcomes them with open arms. Afterwards, Ben transfers to a new school, starts considering therapy to process what happened with their parents, and they're just trying to figure out where they belong in this new place. At their new school, Ben meets a classmate named Nathan who is funny, optimistic, charming, and charismatic to the max, and it's Nathan who's making Ben start to believe that maybe they can have a better, happier life. Again, this book definitely goes places and tackles a lot of important issues with a deft hand, but it brings me so much joy because it's really about Ben realizing that it's okay to be yourself, and that there are people who will accept every piece of who that is, not just the parts they find convenient. A big part of this story is safe spaces, activities, landmarks, people, and places where you don't have to explain yourself or preface yourself. You can just breathe and exist without expectations. It's about those people who recognize that who you are is just as important as what you are, and who allow you to be the most authentic combination of those two things. Ultimately, it's just a beautiful reminder that we are all worthy of love in the ways we choose to define it for ourselves. Next, I have The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is an Own Voices Latinx story about a Dominican-American girl named Xiomara Batista who prides herself on being extremely tough and fierce, but really she's still trying to figure out who she is. Her parents are extremely devout Catholics and they put her in confirmation classes, but she would actually rather be in the school's poetry club, which of course meets at the same exact time as those confirmation classes. But Xiomara's mom would kill her if she ever found out about the poetry she writes, much less about the poetry club itself. But for Xiomara, the only thing she absolutely cannot do is stay silent. This is an extremely difficult, close-hitting book for me, but I think ultimately its hope lies in its power and its impact. There's something incredibly moving about a young Latinx teenager questioning the beliefs they were taught to be self-evident. To have this character who's determined not only to find her voice, but to use that voice to light a path of commonality and understanding so that other people might trust in their own experiences. Poetry itself is about putting words to our experiences and acknowledging that we have the power to choose those words with intention and deliberateness. It gives me hope that we don't have to accept what is given to us when we can write our own stories. Next up, in complete seriousness, I have to recommend Naruto by Kishimoto Masashi. In a nutshell, this is a fantasy manga series about super badass ninjas. The main character, Naruto, is an orphan and he's also been ostracized by his entire village because the circumstances of his birth coincided with a horrible tragedy for the village itself. So with no one on his side and no one backing him up, he is trying to graduate from the ninja academy, but he always seems to be outranked by pretty much everyone in his class. Still, he is determined to become the Hokage, also known as the single most powerful person in the village, so that he can finally be recognized and respected no matter what. I need you to hear me out on this because Naruto as a character is so good and so pure, and his level of character development is a gift. Naruto himself is unerringly optimistic. No matter what has happened to him or what he's up against, he will never give up on himself, on his dreams, or on anyone else. He has this fierce determination that is unparalleled by any other character I've ever met, and while he has a lot of incredible powers, his true power is being able to see into other people's hearts. I think because of his background and his experiences with rejection and loneliness, he knows that giving up or giving in to despair is not even a choice for himself, because if he gives up, there's no one behind him who's going to take up that mantle in his place. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to believe in yourself and in others. You have to know that there are things and people in this world worth fighting for no matter how hard it gets, and that's really what Naruto is all about. And lastly, I think I want to recommend In Other Lands by Sarah Reese Brennan. This is an incredibly charming queer fantasy romp about an extremely obnoxious boy named Elliot who realizes one day that he is one of the few people who can see this invisible wall separating the non-magical world from a place called the Borderlands. From that moment, he's given a choice: go back to the life of blissful ignorance he's always known, or journey into the Borderlands where he can learn things he never would have imagined for himself. Elliot doesn't really have anything or anyone to go back to, so he decides to go live in this new magical place. And while he is complete rubbish at weaponry and fitness training, he does have other skill sets that make him much more valuable than anyone could have ever thought. This story is hilarious and original and thoughtful, but it really gets me in the heartstrings because it really hits home that just because you don't understand people or things that are different doesn't mean they're not worth understanding in the first place. Obviously that goes for Elliot himself, but on a larger scale, he's also taking on this role where he has to bridge the gap between different creatures and different groups, and to do that he has to be able to find and create those connections. All his life, Elliot's never been good enough. He's never had a place where he really fits in or belongs, and no one's cared enough about him to stick around and to see what he does with his life. But when he goes to the Borderlands, he realizes that he has so much more to give than anyone ever thought, and that he does have a place where he belongs. Stories like this give me hope that everyone has a role to play, that everyone has something to offer, and that everyone has a place that is uniquely and inherently theirs. So those are just a handful of stories that bring me hope and comfort, and I hope they can also become beacons of light for other folks. I hope you check out Starworld and the other videos on the Starworld BookTube Tour, which will all be linked down below, so definitely check those out. And let me know in the comments what are some of your favorite hopeful books. But that's everything I had for this recommendations list today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye.